I'm pleased to introduce Eric Grossman to be a speaker again here today. He's spoken with us before. Eric is a professor of education at Emory and Henry College and has brought a good bit of his family here. His daughter Lauren and Robin, so we're so glad to have you here. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me back. I do sort of immediately feel at home. Appreciate that. I do have to take note that it's been quite a while, actually, so I was invited. Does anybody remember how long ago that was?
3 years.
3 or 4 years.
Yeah, see, I was figuring that would be a gauge of sort of how long it takes the collective forgetting to occur for that traumatic event.
I'm pretty sure the collective forgets.
I don't think I can traumatize you maybe any more than the last year has, so I think we're safe on those grounds. It probably is reasonable to ask, why invite me at all? And the truth is, it's because Harry and I are friends and have been for a number of years. We both went to kind of elite, Northeast colleges. And when we were hanging out at Emory and Henry a number of years ago, we had things in common that we'd like to talk about. Is that fair, Harry?
Yeah.
I still remember when I was a sophomore, reading a book in my dorm room, and sort of for the first time being completely fascinated by something, and it was a Richard Dawkins book called The Selfish Gene. It came out in the mid-'80s. And so in that book, he coined this word, meme. And so, it stuck with me. In fact, in a sort of larger scale way that will become apparent here in a little bit. So, unsurprisingly, it came up in some of the conversations I had, with Harry. And so, the first reason that I was invited here was to talk about memes. So, kind of interestingly, I think that was long enough ago that at the time, when I spoke, most of you probably would not have used that term. And just in those few years since, probably now, if you don't use it, I bet you're familiar with it. Are you? Memes? Because, we see them all the time, because it's those little things on the internet that we find humorous or whatever, and maybe put a little twist on and then reshare. Right? And I think it's interesting how that deviates a little bit from the original definition that Dawkins gave it, because it sort of shows again that people like to kind of take ownership and think of themselves as creating these things and then sharing them at their own will, whereas really what Dawkins had done in that book and with the word meme was to kind of suggest a little inversion on how we usually think of that, to say that like the gene that can be selfish and kind of program us to do what it wants, the meme is a cultural version of that same thing that can kind of program us. But we already had that talk, so I won't bore you with that, but you'll see that it comes up a little bit later. So again, why would I be here? You might know me, if not as a professor at Emory and Henry, as an athlete, somebody that's had a long career of competitive athletics, now apparently being taken up by my son. Since I was 14, I've been running or biking or hiking, often competitively. And in fact, if you were to kind of dig into why I ended up in Emory, Virginia, it's because I thru-hiked the AT and was taken, as probably some other folks have been, by Damascus when I hiked through that. And then I was at a particular point in my career where I was able to pursue ultramarathoning, and I actually ended up sort of being a professional ultramarathoner, getting paid to do ultras, and I was paid to come down here. Well, that's an exaggeration, but there were reasons that I had to come down to North Carolina to run in an ultramarathon there, the Mount Mitchell Challenge. And in the meantime, I did a little detour over to Emory and Henry and did a kind of a pre-interview for a position they had posted. And so, really, that's probably why I'm here. Now, what was going on with me that I had this sort of long, 35-year now career? I think in the educational parlance, I'd be like called gritty or something like that. I can make and stick to these long-term goals. I think maybe a less charitable version that I've heard a lot actually is that I'm just really competitive. Like to beat people. And while, I'm not going to sit here and claim I have full access to all my innermost motivations, I'm pretty sure that it's not the best way to look at what has driven me to say that I've been competitive. Maybe not even to say that I've been particularly gritty. And I think the truth is more interesting and maybe will help with today's talk. And let me just give you a scenario, a recollection that I have from when I was 17, basically the age of my son now, who you just heard about. I am in Louisville, where I grew up, and I'm with my closest running buddy from high school, Dave Lawhorn's his name. And he's driving. He's a year older, so he's driving. We're on our way to Bowling Green, Kentucky for the Wendy's 10K Classic. This huge road race at a time when road racing was kind of a bigger deal than it is even today. So it's Friday evening. We're going to go stay in a hotel and get up early for the 10K in the morning. And in the back seats, so Dave and I, you have to understand, we're very methodical, hardworking, sort of straight and narrow. Well, driven, but almost more like just, if we think it's the right thing to do, then that's what we do to train. Well, there's a guy, and we're both small-time public school athletes. The local public school is the one we run for. Well, there was another fellow we ran against, really, from the big Catholic high school, the private, high-powered high school in town, named Rob Schoaf, who was sort of my nemesis in racing. And he wanted to go along because he wanted to race in the 10K too. So we drove him as well. And, it's kind of funny to this day. So Dave and I are sitting up front, thinking probably about hydrating or something like that. Well, Rob Schoaf is in the back seat, kind of kicked up. He's got a cooler, and he's got all his beers that he had intended to share with us. And he's popping one open at a time and drinking all the way down to Bowling Green from Louisville. And, I didn't stop him. So, which raises the question, well, why not? I was kind of this almost goody two-shoes, Well, you might say, and somebody else might say that, he's kind of tanking his own performance, right? And if I want to beat him, then let him drink, And I will admit that when I was well ahead of him, halfway through this 10K, there was sort of a little, satisfied, I'm in front of Rob Schoaf. So that might confirm your hypothesis that, I'm a competitive guy. But the truth is, it's a little more interesting than that, I think. Because see, of all these sort of practices like training, sleeping, eating well, our normal way of thinking of that is, hey, that's a good way to get fit, right? To be prepared to race, and therefore you race well. But looking back, I've had 35 years to think about this. And that's a lot of solo time out running and hiking in the woods, right? I think here's what was really going on. It's kind of interesting. Now, maybe that was a piece of it that I was just, well rested and well hydrated and all that. But the truth is, when I'm in that race, there's this strong voice saying, you have done what you needed to. You have prepared. You deserve to win. This guy, this joker, drank all the way down here. He parties. He doesn't, pay attention to his sleep or his diet. He does not deserve to win. You do. So to heck if I'm going to let him, beat me in this race. That would just be wrong, right? To me, it's like justice needs to be served. And if I have done more to prepare, then I ought to prevail in the race. And if that sounds, I'm really not saying that pridefully. That's just how I've come to understand my own motivations. So you can imagine what happens when 5 miles into this 10K, which is 6.2. He comes back. He catches up to me in the race. And he's like, oh, I had a stitch. Feel better now. I was completely demoralized, okay? I was like, my purpose, my reason, my motivation has just been drained. And in fact, I ended up finishing just a bit behind him. So that's why I can sort of look back and laugh at that. So, of course, as a 17-year-old in Kentucky, I had not learned about evolution, much less evolutionary psychology. Justice was a familiar concept. Obviously, I endorsed that concept. I didn't have the vocabulary at the time to think of it as a social instinct, the way I do now. When I started with that book by Richard Dawkins, I was sort of launching my major in human evolutionary ecology. It's a little hard to imagine an Emory and Henry student majoring in human evolutionary ecology, but that's where I landed. So I studied anthropology and biology. So I came to think of human nature and the traits that we have as shaped by natural selection, and that includes social instincts. So I came to think of those as like, okay, well, how did those traits, those instincts, serve our ancestors, who then passed them along to us, because they survived and were able to reproduce. So I came to see that the idea, maybe we could call it a meme, that our history of seeming progress is not inevitable. Everything around us, everything that is alive today, has a history that goes back equally far, all the way back to the beginning. There's no one lineage that has no existent lineage that has sort of outperformed any other. Some lineages have gotten more complex. I think we can argue that's true for human beings. Some have stayed very similar. And of course there are some lineages that have gone from more complex to more simple. You probably are familiar with like cave fish that don't have eyes. Their ancestors had eyes, or they have ancestors that have eyes. So in fact, an organism can go from being more complex to being less, if that's what the forces, of natural selection cause. There's no reason to think that our, modern human beings represent any particular special place in evolutionary history. We can conceive it, and I guess that is unique today, but that does not keep those forces from acting on us, just because we can think of them. As Dan Dennett, as sort of my favorite contemporary philosopher, says, everything in the biosphere is up for revision, renewal, or cancellation all the time. Well, maybe that's the traumatic part, especially with our current relationship with North Korea. Now, I feel good about some of our social instincts, and I think we all should, even the ones we inherited that are built in by natural selection. I feel good about wanting to take care of our young. It comes very naturally. Very instinctually, we form lifelong friendships. Dave and I were exchanging, Dave Lawhorn, who I was just talking about a second ago. We stay in touch. He's in Frankfort, Kentucky, but regularly in touch, as we were just last night. And those friendships last a lifetime. And I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful on those occasions when we really need help, that it comes very naturally to respond to others' need for help. And I think that's a good thing. I think it's clearly a good thing. People cooperate. We have a lot of neurological machinery built in to help. We recognize other people. We remember good deeds. And we readily exchange favors. And we form groups like this one. I think, though, it's not the case that we appreciate, that all of our instincts are good, right? We are much too quick to moralize. History has shown that the things that we deem immoral or the things over which we become very righteous can shift. Something that, was clearly bad or evil at one time can not seem that way at another time. We can weaponize shame, public humiliation. Social media, makes that really obvious. It's a big issue today, right? Bullying online and that kind of thing. But that instinct to publicly humiliate has been around as long as human beings. We give preference to family members and to our close friends. We work to keep people who are not like us out. Those are instinctive. Not to be desired. Why would we expect evolution to have acted differently? And this goes back to the selfish gene. Why would a gene program its human owner to do anything other than help protect other copies of those genes that might exist in the world? And where do other copies of the genes in our selves exist? In our family, and people like us. So of course that's what the genes program us to do. Why would genes program us to do something which would be sort of universally valuable? And this is the test for justice and ethics, right? Something you would universalize. So it wouldn't matter who you were, you would agree to it. It would be something we could all agree to, no matter what position or group we happen to belong to. So, I don't know. Here we get into a trauma again. But you could respond, all right, wait. But we're such good cooperators, such good communicators. We have language, right? We can reach out across groups. We can coordinate. We can promise. We can resolve disagreements very powerfully. And I agree. That was another fascination of mine when I was studying was linguistics. One of the groups that really drew me early on was the diverse cultures and languages of Papua New Guinea. And so I did a quick check to find out what's going on there now. There are currently 832 living languages. This is not dialects. Distinct languages on that island. 832. Total population is 8 million. So you can be in the highlands of Papua New Guinea, really, literally walk a mile or two and be in a completely distinct linguistic group from the one you just left. It's a remarkable place. So you should go check it out, right? Probably not advisable. In fact, I looked this up too. The U.S. Department of State rates the crime in Papua New Guinea as among the highest in the world. Just a really rough measure is that the life expectancy is 63. Here it's 79. In Leh, one of the large cities there, 78% on an annual basis of households experience crime. So over 3 in 4 households each year are victims of crime. So why is this, ethnographically fascinating place so violent? I mean, it's complex, probably a lot of possible explanations, but one that comes to mind is tribalism. You have a lot of groups looking after their own interests. The linguistic diversity, which was so fascinating to me as a student, is it possible that, the language in New Guinea, isn't just there to communicate, but is it possible that groups use a unique language in order to prevent eavesdropping from neighboring groups? Could it be a way of keeping people out? I mean, again, this is simplistic, but I think it's not a bad way to look at it, that we have some traits that are good for a large social group, and we have some that are not so good. We have some antisocial traits. And the reasons we want, the virtues we want to claim and have reason to claim and endorse, sometimes run afoul of some of those that we've inherited. So we hope that the history of modern people is increasing virtue, right? That instincts that are contrary to the values we want to endorse can be damned. Let's subjugate those to our more noble instincts. So, I use I'm not sure what to call it, my pocket robot, my virtual assistant, and found that one of the bylaws for the UU Church is that you affirm and promote the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. And I can also affirm and promote that goal. And I think it's fair to characterize the UU Church as being optimistic about the arc of the moral universe, so that we could hope that across a large enough span of time, you'll see increasing peace, liberty, and justice. And that phrase, of course, we associate with Martin Luther King Jr., but you probably know, as UU people, that actually originates with Theodore Parker, who's been recognized as a canonical figure by the UU Church. So in 1853, Parker wrote, "Look at the facts of the world. You see a continual and progressive triumph of the right. I do not pretend to understand the moral universe. The arc is a long one. My eye reaches but little ways. I cannot calculate the curve and complete the figure by the experience of sight. I can divine it by conscience. But from what I see, I am sure it bends toward justice." Those are powerful words. He goes on to say, and I think you'll agree this is especially poignant right now, "Things refuse to be mismanaged long." Let's hope that's true. "Jefferson trembled when he thought of slavery and remembered that God is just. Ere long, all America will tremble." Again, let's hope. Until a year and a third ago, I had the general sense of increasing justice. Another word for that you maybe have heard is the expanding circle. That phrase from Peter Singer at Princeton University, the expanding circle. Singer argues that altruism began as a genetically based drive to protect one's kin and community members, but has developed into a consciously chosen ethic with an expanding circle of moral concern. He claims that it is our capacity for reasoning that makes moral progress possible. Our capacity for reasoning. Okay, so finally, here's where I pivot to robots. And I'm tempted to go get Lauren. I actually was able to convince Lauren to come today because I said I was talking about robots. And then she was quite upset when she had to go back with the youth. But how does that relate? It's our capacity for reasoning. It makes moral progress possible. Instinct would say, do what's good for your tribe. Reasoning says, other tribes have interests similar to our own. There's no reason to suppose that any one tribe's interest is preeminent over any other tribe. But none of us is capable of logical thinking. Think about that for a second. I can reason that others' interests should be weighted equally, but I can't. And we can't expect people to be completely unbiased in their interactions with other people. We could strive to be reasonable. We can make up policies, rules. We can say that workplace nepotism is a no-no. That hasn't panned out so well, has it? So what to do? All right. Now, I can paint a lot of scenarios here, and I just took one that, because we're getting ready to do taxes here pretty soon, maybe is relevant, which is that if you decide to do a tax-deductible, contribution to a charity or something like that, maybe this is the time of year you're thinking of that. And so you have this problem of where should I contribute charitably? I don't know. I have some other suggestions too, but just take this problem as an example. You could decide to be completely rational about this, right? Or that you're going to try to be completely rational, maybe put your money to the best possible use, to do some kind of good, I don't know, like decrease poverty, reduce suffering, promote health, and, like I said, strive to be reasonable about it. Hopelessly complex, I think. As soon as you really start to, dig into what should I do, it's just, you could easily throw up your hands and say, well, you know what? I'm going to trust this trusted person or organization. That's a human instinct, right? I'm just going to go on reputation. That's not rational. That's just falling back on instinct. Maybe it works out, but probably not. Well, is there an option? Do we have something that is sort of a logic machine? You can feed a bunch of data into, even complex data, and ask it, to compute, do the most good, just help reduce suffering. What should I do? Oh, wait a second. We've got that. And since 2007, it's basically in our pocket. Right? The connection to that is in our pocket. This is what robots do. And so when I use the word robot, try to resist just the sort of anthropomorphized, being right there next to you. I'm really talking about this, computing agent that can take a lot of information and provide computation. Can plug through it. So let's see. It's a relatively new thing, right? That you have enough power in your pocket to even think about asking that kind of question. And you've probably heard of Moore's Law. This power of computers has been doubling. For a while it was every year, now it's every couple of years. We keep sort of predicting that this increase in computational power is going to flatten out, but it hasn't. It's still going. We keep figuring out new ways to build computers. In 1969, the Apollo guidance computer got us to the moon. Apollo guidance computer had to do all those computations. Pretty complex stuff. That's equal to the power of 2 Nintendo consoles that our kids have. Since 1956, from 1956 to 2015, computing performance has undergone a 1 trillion-fold increase. 1 trillion times more powerful. Yeah, it's mind-boggling. Again, if you were to look it up right now, Harry probably follows this, maybe not so much everybody else, but you can only make transistors so small. You can only shrink down all that computing power so much. So there's been some predictions that, things are getting ready to flatten out on that Moore's Law. But now what comes along? Quantum computing. Have you heard of this? There are quantum computers now built. And we're ushering in a whole new era of, inconceivably fast acting computers. So I don't think the end is in sight. And I cannot explain quantum computing nor predict where that's headed, but guaranteed to transform us from where we are today. The robots we carry around in our pockets have already transformed our daily lives in countless ways. Anybody else got their GPS on? It's already told me a couple times I need to move more. You'll get that? Or if you got your Fitbit and it's telling you, how much you've exercised, your steps, could promote you to go move more, set some goals for your fitness. That's pretty small potatoes right there. What if it could kind of nudge you on a daily basis to be more just? If you're on email, and I would guess most of you are, have you noticed now that you get these automated responses that are shown as choices at the bottom? That's not Google engineers, scripting some possible responses and then posting them there for you. That is a machine that has learned from reading emails, common replies to emails that are like that. Okay? And so it's suggesting more and more intelligent replies. Like those will get better and better. Now that seems like a sort of novel convenience, doesn't it? Well, is it so hard to imagine that you click send on an email and a little automated, what can I call it, robot? A little robot automation says, that seems a little rude. Are you sure you want to send that? or whatever. Or, a Facebook event that you post. Right now, Facebook starts suggesting friends that might like to go. What if Facebook said, hey, you've left out several people who probably are going to take offense that they've been left out of this event? Is that hard to imagine? That's not so hard to imagine. It's kind of a danger. Facebook has finally come to grips with this, right? That sort of their default policies that they thought were neutral have quite an effect. Obviously, probably don't have to go into much detail. It's not a big step from there to say, well, if we're going to have an effect, why not make it a positive one? Why not cue people to better behavior? Not that big a stretch. Now, wisely, this time when I agreed to speak here, I said, I'm going to need a couple sessions, okay? So it wouldn't be another 3 or 4 or 5 years, whatever it's been. So I'm putting some of the maybe more challenging parts of that artificial intelligence discussion off till next time. So I don't know if that creeped you out, thinking of an automated guidance about who you're leaving out. But I think there are some reasons to be concerned, and I want to deal with those, but maybe next time. If we do manage to ride out our current disruption in our long-term march toward more moral progress, I think we still have to reckon with some logical inconsistency of our conception of ethics. However you feel about avoiding, racism, sexism, you probably haven't thought too much about how to avoid speciesism in your language, in your bylaws, such as those that recognize the dignity of persons. We're going to be we are living with robots. They're getting more intelligent. How we respond to this change is going to set the trajectory for, our moral world, our moral universe. I think probably forces in the world that are currently trying to divide people will sort of have their own interest in how they respond to artificial intelligence and robots. I think we'll need to be mindful of how we respond, and are we going to dignify artificial intelligence? So why do we live? Why do we have robots? Why do we live with them? And I think most people will want to say how they serve us, what robots do for us. They sometimes do chores, maybe that we don't want to do, or they process information. So, I don't know, anybody have a Roomba? Vacuum your house. There's lawnmowers you can buy now that are robotic lawnmowers. GM has announced they're mass producing a completely robotic car next year. It's that imminent. You've known these things have been driving around, but now GM is manufacturing a model that has no steering wheel. That is out next year. Lawrence, who's very excited for me to share this with you, has invented conceived of an invention that would robotically scoop your pet's poop from the yard. And who wouldn't want that? There are elder care robots manufactured right now. The Care Robot is manufactured by Fraunhofer. I checked with my robot. She told me that. So, those are ways they do chores. We've talked some about how robots process information, for our own use, hopefully. I don't know. My mom still does, but most people probably don't ask for verbal directions anymore from other people. You say, I'll just check with Google or whatever. MapQuest. Other things we do, I don't know. If you happen to be dating, I think now it's the case that people go to online apps to find other people with common interests. Does anybody remember phone numbers of their friends anymore? I mean, I do still remember my home phone number as a kid, but I can't remember my daughter's phone number because, the robot assistant keeps that for us. But, in the spirit of Richard Dawkins, why can't we consider the interests of robots? How do we benefit them? And that's a different way to look at it, isn't it? We kind of feed them when we plug them in, right? We do some hygiene. If you're a good steward of your device, you probably keep some kind of antivirus program on there, like a vaccination for your offspring there. We update them, clean them, repair them. So, since Charles Darwin, really, that's been kind of the habit of biologists to kind of flip that. Instead of saying design is something that is from a creator downward, it's from the bottom up. You have these sort of wild types, and then the ones that work out are the ones that emerge as the design. So, there's all kinds of things that because of that process have design. I mean, there's no question about that. Teeth are designed for chewing food. Fur is designed to keep you warm. Pencils are designed for writing. So Darwin said, all right, well, teeth and fur evolved. Did a pencil evolve? Does a pencil have its own interests? I think you probably want to say this, little slim graphite-filled piece of wood is a clever invention of people. We, write with it, obviously. But think of what the pencil has achieved, even after the advent of computers. The humble pencil. I asked my robot. She told me. Every year, 14 billion replicas of a pencil are manufactured by us. Look at what the pencil has done. It has gotten us to manufacture way more copies of itself than there are people in the world every year. A different way to look at it. But you could look at robots like that too. They've done really well getting us to build them, right? Make them smarter and smarter. 2014 was the year when the number of smart devices surpassed the number of human beings on Earth. 2020, it's projected will be outnumbered by smart devices 4-1. 4 smart devices, meaning connected to the internet, robots will be outnumbered 4-1. So that's not just an intellectual exercise. I mean, it sounds interesting. Oh, well, okay, I guess I see what you mean, Eric. Pencils have interests, whatever. But really, I'm bringing that up to help inform a sort of moral trajectory. When we start drawing a circle with our little pencil, is it going to include these entities? Or are we still going to be saying, no, we're, human beings are the special pinnacle of creation? And that's going to make a big difference. Robots could potentially serve as a tool to improve our thinking. They may help us overcome our biases. But they may also sort of require a dignity. Now, it's fun to look, all this talk about the singularity and that date at which the power of artificial intelligence will exceed that of a human brain and all that. It's fun. Harry and I could talk about that for a long time. The kind of interesting thing is that even if you were skeptical a short while ago, I don't think anybody who really knows that area is skeptical that it will happen, that our intelligence will be surpassed by machine intelligence. And I mean, there's a ton of examples, but you probably are familiar with like when Watson won at Jeopardy. So there were a lot of skeptics before then that a computer could play Jeopardy. But, a computer program was essentially programmed to be able to respond to human prompts without particular understanding, of course. So that marked sort of the end of some skepticism. But here's what really, drilled the nail in the coffin. Google built, not a computer program really, but an artificial intelligence that didn't know anything to begin with, and just started feeding it information, examples, and it learned on its own. So it used that to learn this Asian game called Go. It's a very complex game, and people at first said, "Well, you're not going to be able to learn Go because it's very like intuitive, requires sort of this genius human being to kind of." It's not even you can conceive it. It's so complex you can't sort of just algorithmically calculate the best next move. Unlike chess. Like this is more complicated than chess. Well, AlphaGo learned on its own to now outplay any human competitor. The very best human genius level Go players in the world. And when was that? Last year? 15? And they took that same intelligence and just showed it a bunch of chess games. We're just like curious, I guess. How would this do if we just, let it read all the chess games that it could and play other artificial intelligences, other computer programs playing chess? In 4 hours, knowing nothing about chess, not being programmed by chess masters or anything like that, just being shown how to play. They told it the rules of the game, but it learned to play chess in 4 hours, all the whole history of human chess playing, and now so that same alpha program, Google's alpha artificial intelligence, could beat any chess player in the world. It's even a little spookier than that because they can study what the computer is learning or what the artificial intelligence is learning, but they can't decipher it. Like the moves that AlphaGo use, they have no way to figure out like why it did that. Can't justify it in sort of human cognitive terms. So, again, the trajectory, I think, of how we respond to this rapidly emerging set of entities, I don't even know what to call it, artificial intelligence, I think will set the stage for morality, next era of morality and justice. And like I said, I'm going to save the challenges that I think are there to sort of human liberties for next time. I'll wrap it there.